Hello, Peter Wood here from Greenwood Days, back in the garden with another of my short films. Over the last few films we've started off with a big log and we've cleaved it, we've split it down, got it down to roughly the right size we want. Sorry about that. Roughly we've got the right size. We've used an axe to chop the corners off, and then we've sat on the shaving horse and used the draw knife to rough the wood out down to a billet ready to put on the lathe. So I thought it's about time now to introduce you to the pole lathe. It's a pole lathe because we've got one big long pole that sort of powers it. Obviously your leg powers it, but the pole gives you the return so you can push the treadle back down again. The thickness of the pole does have a bearing on how much spring there is and how flexible it is. If you want to be really quick, then you want a thicker piece of wood so it springs back a lot quicker. But if you want to build up your muscles in your legs, then use a smaller diameter piece of timber or pole of timber, and then it's easier to push down, but it won't come back so quick. It's secured in the ground on a nice stake, really banged into the ground. You get a lot of pressure trying to pull the stake up, so make sure that's really secure. And then we've got a tripod here, and that determines again how much spring there is. You move the tripod up to about here, then you get less spring, or it's harder to push down. It means it springs back a bit quicker, but it's harder to push down. So experiment where you put the tripod bit. It will really change how your lathe works. Over this side we've got the business, which is the pole lathe. This is an amalgamation of two of Mike Abbott's designs. We've got a double bed here that the poppets slide along. That's from his green woodworking book. But then we've got these, what he coins as Manx style legs. That means they concertina up and back down again, so you can raise and lower the lathe depending on who's working, which is really useful for me because I do a lot of teaching. So if children are using it, or adults, tall, short, we can change the height of the lathe to suit each person. And if you're wanting to build one for your garden or in your shed or in your sitting room or wherever, and you want different people using it, then I'd go for the Manx style legs. The other advantage, if you need to put it away, is you can just take the pegs out, lift it up, and these Manx legs fold flat, and you can rest it or hook it onto the wall. A real space saver. One final thing is you don't need the pole. You need something that will make this treadle move back up again, but you could put a pole up on either side and then a bit of bungee cord across the top. Or if you're inside or in a garage, you can affix a bit of bungee cord between two hooks in the ceiling and then attach the string to the bungee so that when you push down, it bends down and then springs back up again. Maybe another film, I'll show you different ways of powering the lathe. But I work in the woodland, I've got plenty of space, sorry about that, so I prefer using the traditional pole, but don't let that stop you. Make a bungee cord, attach it to the ceiling, or put some poles up on either side. I'll do a little close-up and show you a few more parts of the lathe, and then maybe the next film will show you about getting the billet onto the piece of wood. We're going to now focus on the pole lathe and its constituent parts. So I might as well start while I'm crouched down here with the treadle. This is what gives you the power. As you push down, the string tightens, turns the piece of wood towards you, and then the pole, which we've mentioned before, then pulls it back up again. You can change how much power you get or how many revolutions you get on the lathe by increasing the length of the treadle. The longer it is, the more revolutions you get, but the harder it is to push. So it's a real balance getting the right length of treadle for you. You can also increase the spring back from the pole just by adding an extra turn on your treadle. So the pole will spring down a little bit more, but then spring back a bit quicker as well. So that's the treadle. It's fixed to the ground on a board with a little hinge. I'll show you that a little bit later, but let's concentrate on the actual body of the lathe. As I say, it's a twin or double bed lathe. You've got these two beds, and let's take this piece of wood out, and that will show you the poppets. This is one side poppet. This has got a cranked handle a bit of threaded bar going through. Let's move that out of the way. And then it's been filed to a point. The thread goes straight the way through the wood. So for example, this might be a bit of 8mm threaded bar. You'd probably drill a 6 or 7mm hole, so it guides it through, but then cuts its own thread as you go backwards and forwards through. They do loosen over time, but there are different ways of tightening it up after that. We'll come to that later. If you've got no welding equipment, then just get a bit of threaded bar and then give it a cold bend, and then you end up with a nice little handle anyway. This side is just a coach bolt, push through and then again filed to a point. This bit here, that's for your tool rest, and that should be in line with these centres. So you can then put your tool rest, and for me, most of the time, I like my tool rest to be in line with the centres, so that when I put my chisel on, it's going above the centre, above top dead centre. As you can see, the tool rest is loose. You can fix it to one end, you can put pegs in underneath. I've never bothered, to be honest. Maybe once or twice I thought it would be really useful to have it fixed down, but most of the time I've not bothered. So easy to take off, and that's just a bit of pine cut to fit. Nice and solid you want it. You don't want it flexing, because it's going to, you might be turning something quite long, so if it's not solid it's going to flex, and that affects how you turn. That pushes up against the poppets, but if the piece of wood you're turning is a bigger diameter, then we've just got a little peg here that we put into, I don't know if you can see that, we put it into a little hole, and that keeps coming out and out, so it will pull it out away from the work so it's not rubbing. We've got other peg holes here, you can make another peg for here, but most of the time one peg seems to do the job. Again, there's other ways of holding the tool rest away from the work. Do send in your ways of doing it. Do comment and tell me how bad this way is of doing it and how much better your way is. Be polite, but tell me, and I'll try them out and learn different ways. It's a two-way street, and I do enjoy that. So that's the tool rest. It also makes a handy mallet, so I can knock the wedge out. That wedge obviously goes in and secures the poppet to the lathe bed. So when we take that out, put that over there, you can move that across, but the bottom of the tool rest and this little piece of wood are the same height, and they make it parallel to the tool rest, so they rest on there, and you can move that up and down, and it's nice and easy to adjust. You can do that on both sides. Knock that back in, make sure it's nice and tight, and that really is all the different parts of the lathe. Thank you very much. See you next time.